Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 11 on DraftKings is finally here. We've passed the midway mark. Now, I know for most fantasy analysts, they get to coast at this time of the season. They start playoffs in week 14. Then by week 16, they're all finished and they're packing it in and just being football fans, or maybe they start dabbling in daily fantasy stuff. Nah, that's not how it works for me. This is a 20-week season in the daily fantasy universe. We go all the way through the Super Bowl. That's the way that we play it. I wouldn't have it any other way, so we're geared up for the second half. This is the first week for that. Hopefully you guys had yourselves a solid week 10. I know that in our community, based on what people have said to me in Twitch chat and what I saw in Discord, we had some awfully big winners in week 10. If you wanted to go check out the recap video, it's available on the second channel. There will be a link down below in the description, as well as links to all my socials, and most importantly, the Discord chat. If you have not gotten involved in our Discord yet, we are over 4,000 members strong in the Smiz Life Discord channel. There's a link down below, and there are subs only channels, which means if you are subscribed on Twitch, or if you're a channel member here on YouTube, there is a link in the description down below. If you don't see the join button right next to the subscribe button, where you can become a channel member, you get some great emotes that you can play along with, and the best value add possible, our Discord channel, where there will always be somebody to talk to you about daily fantasy football or any other daily fantasy sport in kind of a troll-free environment. It's a very friendly, great community. We've been fostering it for the last 3.5, 4 years, and it's grown to a point where we're seeing some very, very big winners in there. So if you want to get better at daily fantasy, that's where you need to be. Other than that, drop a like on the video. Let's see if we can get 2,000 plus likes on this video before kickoff on Sunday. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell, leave a reply, join the channel, jump in the Discord, click some damn thing. And let's do first look. Since you already saw who the cover boy is, you kind of know where I'm going to end up on this one. But like I've said numerous times this year, that the pricing in 2020 reminded me very much of the pricing in 2016, where no running backs were priced at or above 8,000. That was kind of the threshold. And you could basically just put anybody that you want into lineups, and it was very friendly. We can get super stud wide receivers. We could get 25 touch running backs. And then around week 10 of that year, week 11 of that year, they changed everything and they priced up the running backs. That's week 11. They've priced up the darn running backs. Interesting. So Christian McCaffrey is up at 9,400, but it does not look like he is going to play this weekend, which means that Mike Davis is going to be the lead back with his negative 60 air yards on the season, which is absurd in its own right. But they've priced him properly this week at 6,800. This is just weird. 6,600, 6,700, 6,700, 4,000. 6,800. Clearly that was a misprice last week, and clearly he didn't smash either. But now you have a decision that you have to make going up against Detroit, who has been terrible at defending opposing running backs. We saw 15 targets go to McKissick, or 19 targets, whatever, go to McKissick last, some ridiculous number. I'm shell shocked by the amount of targets that McKissick has seen the last 2 weeks. And then Antonio Gibson runs in 2 touchdowns, and they had another short one that McKissick got. They've allowed more touchdowns on goal-to-go situations to opposing running backs than any other team, and they've allowed like a perfect use. If you get a goal-to-go situation against Detroit, you score. So Mike Davis, if they do get into a goal-to-go situation, let's see if they do with Teddy Bridgewater possibly sitting out here. That makes Mike Davis at least considerable at 6,800, but he's not a smash play like he was before. Something else that we came up with back in 2016 on the Edge podcast, rip to the Edge podcast, was something that we used to call Team Jam 'em in. Meaning, back then, it was David Johnson who was tearing everything up and Le'Veon Bell who was tearing everything up, and they would get a ton of targets and they would get all bunch of touchdowns and they would get 20 carries a game, and they were basically 25 points every single week with a floor of like 16, 17 points every single week. And they were priced up. At this point in the season, before, they were like 7,800, maybe 8,000. Then they started pricing up to 9,000, 10,000. And the question was, how are you going to get these guys in? I'm just going to jam them in and we're going to figure it out later. So for the sake of this week's first look, and to pour a little one out for my homies here, We're going to go back to Team Jam 'em in and pretend and party like it's 2016 all over again with Alvin Kamara going up against Atlanta. And a weird anomaly that I saw yesterday when I was kind of looking at stats, when I put together my sheet in my little notebook here, and I start looking at teams and players and make notes and totals and just interesting stats and whatever else for each week of play. I said, oh, New Orleans is playing Atlanta. Let me go take a look at Alvin Kamara's history against the Atlanta Falcons. And as touchdown unlucky as Alvin Kamara was last year, you could argue that he has seen positive regression to the mean in a good way for us here, because he was touchdown unlucky. That maybe he's a little bit touchdown lucky this year with 11 touchdowns so far in the games that he's played. However, in the 6 games that he's played against Atlanta the last 3 seasons, he's scored no touchdowns. Really weird. He's seen more targets per game against Atlanta. He's had more catches per game against Atlanta. He's been in the realm of where his normal attempts are, rush attempts on a game-to-game basis. He's never going to be a 20 carry guy, at least not in normal weeks. He's generally sits between 9 and 13. Where he does his work is in the targets column. This is what we go after him for, and because he's getting the majority of the inside the 5 carries. Now, let's say that his volume stays where it was all season long and has been historically, but he happens to go into the end zone like he normally does against most teams, but apparently not Atlanta. We have an expectation here of a ton of points. We also have a really high expectation for Dalvin Cook. Less involved in the passing game than I would like, but not Derrick Henry levels of not involved in the passing game. We could also be clouded by recent memory. 3 of his last 4 games have gone for over 30 points, with 2 of them being slate breakers, with 42 in week 9 and 51.6 in week 8. And now he squares off against Dallas, who has given up points. I don't know what adjective to use here. Like at will. They're not willing to give up points. They just bleed points. They hemorrhage points against opposing running backs, against opposing offenses. Chat says regularly. Yes, as if it was their job, basically. So we're going to jam Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara into this lineup for old time's sake and for everything else. Let's see if we can get a third running back, because that's what I like to do on first look. I like to play 3 running backs. We do have Miles Sanders against kind of a tough defense, but had a nice little comeback game, although he got vultured twice. One on a touchdown by Boston Scott, who was clearly out of bounds. Another time on an inside the 5 carry for Corey Clement. Very happy for them and their families, but not pleased overall. Already talked to you about Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt with Nick Chubb back. Both of them against the tough front 7 in Philly, who has not been very giving to opposing running backs, but you know that Cleveland is a very talented running game, and they are committed to establishing it. So don't hate that. We do have Connor against Jacksonville, but they haven't really committed to giving him the ball a lot over the last month, and not very involved in the passing game. He can... I believe that Connor is a tournament play this week, but probably not somebody that I really want to jam into cash games with the prices where they are and with the other players that are around his price point. I would be looking for somebody who's got a little bit more involvement in the pass game or way more usage, but I think he's a good tournament play, right? So he's somebody that I think can score 2 touchdowns to get us 100 yards rushing, but he could also get us like 50 yards rushing and no touchdowns and 2 catches, which is clearly not good enough for cash based on this slate. What we saw from DeAndre Swift this week was absolutely fantastic, and them committed to giving him more involvement in the passing game. 5, 5, 4, 5. And we've seen his snaps increase each one of the last 3 weeks. We've seen his rush percentage, meaning the percentage of rush attempts for the Lions that are going to DeAndre Swift, is climbing over the last month. So he is taking hold of this job, and I hope that he takes further hold of this job, giving us a realistic expectation of 20 touches week in and week out, and no more of this nonsense, right? No more of this, please, where he gets like 9 touches in a game. That's unacceptable. Or 13 touches against Atlanta. That's unacceptable. For this Lions offense to be as good as it can possibly be, they need to get the ball in the hands of DeAndre Swift 15 times a game on the ground and 4 or 5 times through the air. And Carolina, who has also hemorrhaged touchdowns against opposing running backs, very interested in him as well in this. You know that Robinson's going to get his 20 touches, albeit they're going to be probably less efficient than normal going against Pittsburgh, who has been a buzzsaw on defense. Latavius Murray, if you wanted to pivot. I'm off of all of the Indy running backs. I know that they're all cheap, and I know that Green Bay's been terrible, but they're essentially all splitting the same amount of snaps. They're playing like 33% of the time. Tournament plays only at best, and you're praying for touchdowns because you know you're not going to get enough volume. Antonio Gibson getting good volume, but not amazing volume because he's not playing 100% of the snaps, roughly playing about 50% of the snaps and 10% on third down because he's ceding a ton of usage to J.D. McKissic, who has seen an absurd 29 targets the past 2 weeks. And as we know, one target in terms of fantasy expectation for a running back is worth 2.7 carries for that running back. So JD McKissic, with the volume that he's getting since Alex Smith has taken over at quarterback because of the injury to Kyle Allen, has pushed him into a spot where I believe that at 5.2K, he's somewhat cash game viable, meaning that he's not going to hurt you all that bad if he goes back to a normal level. And a normal level in this offense with the amount of time that he's playing, and Alex Smith at QB is probably like 8 targets a game. If he gets 8 targets a game and catches 6 of those, that's essentially a touchdown for J.D. McKissic, working the passing yards. He's probably got somewhere around a 10-point floor at this point, or an 11-point floor, which for 5.2K is not going to hurt you for that price. And as I said, it's tougher to find value this week, but living in the COVID age in 2020, value can pop up for us at any time. But for right now, I'm going to plug DeAndre Swift and move on with my day. Quarterbacks, we're going to talk more in depth about some quarterbacks as the week goes on. Clearly, we're going to go over a few of them in tomorrow's episode of the FanDuel First Look, which is more of a tournament look where we're going to try and stack players, and we're going to try and bring back players and everything else. So we'll dig into going with some more expensive ones. Because of this build with Team Jam 'em In, I've only got 4,200 left. So while I'm going to be interested in some of these more expensive quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson has not looked really good at all. We saw him get over 20 points for the first time since the game against Philly in week 6, which is crazy, and his price is still up around 7,300. Tennessee is a pass funnel offense. He does bring us a rushing floor, so I think that he's tournament viable, but not something I want to jam into cash games. Aaron Rodgers against a tougher defense, but a total over 50 in this game. Herbert's been outstanding, and squaring off against the Jets, we may want to consider their running backs once we get that to come into focus as the week goes on a little bit later. Roethlisberger against Jacksonville has been outstanding with 22 touchdowns so far this year, multiple touchdowns in every game since week 6 against Cleveland, and his price just doesn't move, and we know that the ball's basically going to go to 3 guys mostly, 2 of them the majority of the time, and we know where the touchdowns are going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster and Ebron and Claypool basically leading the way in terms of their end zone and red zone usage. Watson, I think, is more in play this week than he was last week. We do have an injury to monitor with Drew Brees as the week goes on, which could open up a value play in Jameis Winston if his ribs are busted to the point where he can't play. We don't know what's going on yet, so I can't include that right now in this lineup. And Cam Newton has not been great, but we do have rushing upside here. And against Houston, who has not been a good defense at all against the pass or against the run, I think we have an opportunity to open up Cam Newton and some of his stacks for tournaments. But where I'm going to go in this lineup, and I mentioned already that, like, what is he, 5,900 for Jameis against Atlanta. So, and he does correlate well with Alvin Kamara, who should see 8+ targets. So you can go with Winston, Kamara in the same lineup if you're looking for value there, and any one of his pass catchers. But for me, while there are other players in this range that are interesting, we know that we're getting 40 attempts out of Joey Burrow. We know that Washington has a tough front 7 that can put some pressure on him, but he has a talented enough wide receiver crew that we can throw to. You don't need to stack in cash games. You can if you want, if you find that the value's there. Cash is more about stuffing as much point per dollar, as much points over expectation at the price point that you can get to. And Joe Burrow at 5,500 gives us an opportunity. He's averaging 20.6 DraftKings points on the year. Not out of the realm of possibility to expect 22 points from him and 4xing this salary. So a ton of value for Burrow. I think he is mispriced. I think that he needs to be probably in this range up in here. Like Cam Newton averaging 20.1 DraftKings points is 6.2. Matt Ryan averaging 20.8 is 6.3. Teddy Bridgewater averaging 19.5 before the injury, was 6.4K. He's going to be replaced by XFL graduate PJ Walker, who's 4,800. If you want an extreme value, maybe you can look there. But again, that's a tournament play. For me, I don't think that he has anywhere near the floor that Joey Burrow has. So we're getting like maybe a $700 to $1,000 discount in terms of DraftKings price on Joe Burrow. So he's a very easy play in that spot for me. I'm going to plug a cheap defense into this lineup. And then we're going to work on our wide receivers and tight ends. So can't really afford the expensive guys, but I'll talk about them with you for just a second. Davante Adams, he's good. I like him. Good player. Yeah. I could give you stats. I can tell you how many weeks he's had double-digit targets. I could talk about how many touchdowns he's had. We could talk about the resurgence of Aaron Rodgers and what his touchdown percentage is. We could figure out if Xavier Rhodes is injured or any of those sorts of things. But like honestly, like what do I need to tell you? Like he's ridiculous. So like play him. Moving on. Julio Jones against New Orleans. We're going to have to wait and see a little bit on this one based on the injuries that they've had, but Julio Jones is solid week in and week out. But again, based on what I'm building in this lineup and where I think people are going to go a lot in this lineup, we kind of have to think a little bit more about if and how we're going to spend up. As you see, we only have 4,400 average remaining salary per player. Michael Thomas, man, 765. Can we get this dude some targets? Please? Like what happened? Like, do they hate him this much now that they just won't? We're not going to call your plays anymore. You're the third option on every play now. It's baffling. AJ Brown, tough matchup. Kind of expensive. Thielen, one of the league leaders in terms of end zone targets. Only 14 targets the last 3 weeks, priced down to 6,300 now. We're getting him at a discount, and that's kind of when you want to buy, right? For tournaments. We'll talk about this tomorrow on the FanDuel First Look a little bit more. You kind of want to buy players as their price is going down. The percent of people that are willing to play them is going down so that you can buy low and not wait and see, right? So I'm interested in, for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of people are going to play Dalvin Cook this week. So Adam Thielen and Jefferson present to us a little bit of a leverage play off of Dalvin Cook, as well as an opportunity to buy low at their prices. Chase Claypool, outstanding volume since he has gotten his merit-based promotion into the starting lineup. And Jacksonville, a team that we want to attack week in and week out. I love the usage around the goal line for Chase Claypool, and assuming that there won't be weather concerns in Jacksonville this week gives us an opportunity for him to have that big splash ability that he did not have for us in week 10. T. Higgins, another kid who's doing exceptional this season. We've been on T. Higgins seemingly since like week 4 or week 5, and he's done absolutely nothing but produce on a week in, week out basis. But at that price point, we also have Deontay Johnson. And I'm buying what Deontay Johnson's selling. For the simple fact that every game that Deontay Johnson has been healthy, he's gotten double-digit targets from Ben Roethlisberger in a very talented offense, and now faces a defense that has no chance to stop what he brings to the table. I believe that we have a great chance at a 20-plus point DraftKings day if he stays healthy. The only thing stopping him is an in-game injury. Every single player in the NFL has that same risk. Deontay Johnson's value or volume has presented us with another opportunity to buy his salary at a value against Cincinnati. 26.6 points for 5.2K. If he puts up 20 points, that's over 3x his salary. If he gets us to 25, we're more than 4xing his salary. So Deontay Johnson is the first place that I'm going to go for this Pittsburgh offense against the Jacksonville defense that can't stop him. I mentioned Jefferson as well, so we'll highlight him as well, but the volume in that passing game has been scarce for the past 2 weeks because of how easily the running game has done. And if they get ahead of Dallas, we could see more of the same. But if they get ahead of Dallas, because Dallas just gives up a ton of long pass plays, we could have a situation where they're must plays at their salary. Couple of other guys in this range. Fulgham's had a great season. Tyler Boyd, if you wanted a cheaper option, to Higgins to go along with Burrow. But I think that we need to find value plays, as I said. The value play that we were on last week, because of the injury to Preston Williams, who remains on IR, Jakeem Grant, on the field a lot more, running a lot more routes, is electric, and can get deep. He did not do that in week 10. But for 3K, he got us 14 points. You can take this touchdown away. Touchdowns are fluky, right? It's just a part of fantasy football. Touchdowns are something that I cannot predict, but we can predict routes. We can predict volume. 5 targets each of the last 2 weeks. He has big playability. He has not shown that yet. If they get him the ball in space, there is a distinct chance that he can bust one. If you take that touchdown away, 7.5 points in week 9, and he would have had 8.3 points in week 10. Denver has not been really efficient defensively, which on limited volume, which is what they've allowed Tua to throw the ball less than like 30 times a game. Jakeem Grant presents us with another opportunity for value and volume at a low price for $3,500, at least in terms of routes run. That opens up a little bit more salary for us. And somebody who has seen an absurd amount of volume has been JAKOBI Meyers. The last 3 weeks, he has been over 40% of the market share of targets for the New England Patriots. Now he gets a matchup against Houston, who has not been able to stop pretty much anybody. And if his volume stays somewhat similar, where basically every time that Cam Newton drops back, he's looking to throw the ball at JAKOBI Meyers. At 4,900, he's another player at wide receiver who should see easily convertible targets into catches, which is what we want in this lineup to give us a very solid floor with an opportunity of upside as well. That leaves us with 3,300 for a tight end. So we've got to find a cheapie. There's no expensive ones on the list, none above 5,000. So we got to come down here. And that's how we're going to finish the lineup this week. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate y'all being here. And I hope that you have yourselves a good time. Look out for another video right here.
He's a legend.